Games. I love playing games. I think games to me are very similar to like films or books. Movies and books are very influential to a lot of people's lives. And I do think games are a part of that as well. Games have, shaped me into the person that I am today. There are many games that I love. I could probably list 50 games that I would say 10 out of 10, perfect, fantastic games. But unfortunately, I can only pick 10 games. This was a really, really hard list for me to put together. It took me several days to go back and forth and, rethink about all the games that I have played that have influenced my life, which ultimately led to this definitive list of my top 10 favorite games of all time. Starting off with number 10. I remember the first time I played Fallout 3 and getting lost in time, exploring the wasteland was incredible. Most of you may remember me saying that I lost all sense of time playing Elden Ring. Fallout 3 was one of those games. There's obviously a plot in Fallout 3 that you follow, but what I really like about Fallout 3 is you can explore and you have the freedom to go wherever you want and explore the wasteland, basically however you wanted. It was the first game for me that you could do something like this. I tend to gravitate more towards the Fallout series than the Elder Scrolls series. Now don't get me wrong, I love Skyrim. I think Skyrim is a fantastic game. But I'm a sucker for post-apocalyptic games, especially survival games. Games like Project Zomboid, The Forest, Stalker, where you have to micromanage your items and there's a loot system, you have to eat, drink, and sleep. And I just find all that fascinating and really fun. Skyrim to me felt more like an epic adventure, whereas Fallout 3 felt more like an epic survival game. Fallout 3, in my opinion, is the best Fallout game. I know a lot of people that think New Vegas is the best Fallout game, and I'm not going to argue with that. New Vegas was amazing. I love New Vegas. But for me, Fallout 3 is the best in the series. I did enjoy Fallout 4, but no, Fallout 3 and even New Vegas were miles better. I'm not even going to talk about Fallout 76. I'm really not a fan of the way you interact with characters in narratively in Fallout and the new Fallout games. What I really liked about Fallout 3 was the choices that you made when you were speaking to characters. There was a series of dialogue choices that were sentences that you read and you chose what you wanted to pick. I'm really not a fan of the wheel is basically yes, no, or maybe. I'm not a fan of that. I just think it takes away from the immersion. I just feel like I was more invested in the choices in Fallout 3 than, Fallout 4. I mean, Fallout 4 technically is a better game than Fallout 3, obviously, but it didn't have the same, heart and soul as Fallout 3. The game is riddled with bugs. It's basically a meme towards Bethesda, all their games are really buggy, but despite that, it never stopped me from playing the game, it never stopped me from loving the game. It's one of those games that I really wish I could wipe my mind and play it again. Sometimes I do wonder if I would still love the game if I was able to do that. I think so. I hope so. So yeah, Fallout 3, what an experience I had with this game. It will forever be one of my favourite games of all time.
There is nothing, only warm primordial blackness. Your conscience ferments in it. No larger than a single grain of malt. You don't have to do anything anymore.
I will admit, I didn't think I would like this game, or should I say, I didn't think I would love this game when I first played it. This game was recommended to me, and it took me a while to play it. But when I did, it took me by surprise. I get it, this game is not going to be for everyone. Disco Elysium is a story-driven game, and it leans heavy on its narrative. A role-playing game presented in a top-down isometric view in the style of a point-and-click game. Disco Elysium is centered around a detective who suffers from a 3-day alcohol and drug abuse amnesia, waking up in a trashed hotel room with a severe hangover and no memory of what he's doing there, or even of his own identity. This serves as a starting point as the mystery surrounding the character you play as unfolds through a series of choice-based dialogue you have with other characters in the game world. Very quickly, we the player learn that the character we play as is a detective sent here 3 days ago to solve a murder. But through a series of unfortunate events that we will find out later through the course of the game, the character parties really hard instead. But the thing that I found really interesting about Disco Elysium, rather than changing and having major effects on the game's overall plot, it's more about the effects of the character you play as, and what other characters around him see him as in the game world. Every choice that you make in this game will change the overall persona of the character that you're playing. Throughout the game, you have a partner, Kim Kutaragi. I love this guy. And depending on how you carry yourself and act towards everything, this will ultimately shape Kim's thoughts on you, which could lead him into either backing you up during intense moments or simply ignoring you. If you play aggressively or forcefully, other characters won't trust you and will hide information. If you play emotionally and sensitively, characters will think you're weak and pathetic. I just think that's really fascinating. Finding a good balance is key, but it doesn't really matter how you play. Each playstyle adds to the overall replay value as you experience different outcomes and interesting results. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil this game, because I honestly think that this is a very special game that if you are interested, you should definitely try out. Now, I did play the game really early on when it was, you had to read everything, and with the game being fully updated with full voice acting, the voice acting in his game is fantastic. Like, I absolutely love the voice acting in his game.
People made gold and champagne tinted interiors and facades to suit the times, calling this the new style. But more importantly, disco happened.
The game features a very interesting perk system. The way the perk system works is basically the character's overall emotions and senses. There is no right or wrong way of playing this game. Even if you think adding points to intellect and making your character super smart, this will have backlash. The character will start talking to himself a lot regarding every small detail that could cloud your judgment and make the character you play as lose confidence in himself. Focusing purely on strength and nothing else may result in your character having a heart attack and essentially leading to game over. It's all about trying to find that balance, but again, like I said, it doesn't really matter how you play, because however you play will lead to some interesting and funny moments. The game is funny too. It doesn't take itself too seriously. There are dark and emotional moments, but they are played out so well that it adds to the game's overall charm. Throughout the course of the game, a voice talks to you and the character, known as the Ancient Reptilian Brain. This voice serves as the main story beat about the character you play as. It's a voice inside his head, mocking you and the character, but also challenging you, making you think about the information you've just learned and whether or not you should trust it. It's a very interesting choice in adding paranoia to the player and making you question everything that is happening around you. It worked on me anyway. Yeah, there's loads to love about Disco Elysium. I want to play more games like this. I find it really fun just playing about with conversations and seeing how a different conversation can shape, the character that you're playing. Before I played Disco Elysium, I never played any game like it, and I know there are a few other games that are kind of similar, but yeah, Disco Elysium, man, that's such a good game, and I really want a Disco Elysium 2. I really want them to make another one.
Rise if you would, for that is our curse.
Fear not the dark, my friend.
Okay, don't come at me, okay, because this is 3 games in one. Whatever, it's my list, okay? I didn't want to have multiple games from the same series in my top 10, so I've just put the series in the one. And that series is the Dark Souls series. I love the Dark Souls series. I'm a huge Souls fan. I love all the games. If I had to pick between the 3, I would say Dark Souls 1 is definitely the best one. I love it. Absolutely love it. Close will be Dark Souls 3, and my least favourite, Dark Souls 2. But I do owe a lot to Dark Souls 2, because if it wasn't for Dark Souls 2, I don't know, maybe eventually I would play the series, I'm not sure, but yeah, this list might be very different. When I first played the first Dark Souls, I didn't like it. I couldn't get into it. There was something about it, I don't know, I just couldn't get into it. It wasn't until I accidentally got a rental of Dark Souls 2. Came through my door one day, and I was like, oh, okay, fine, whatever, I'll play it. And I don't really know what happened, but something must have clicked. I loved the game. I thought it was great, and I played it and finished it, and it made me go back and play Dark Souls 1. And I don't know what happened, maybe all the planets aligned or something, but holy shit, Dark Souls 1 clicked, and it clicked big time. It was fantastic. I loved it. It was incredible. And then Dark Souls 3 comes out, and now I'm a huge fan. The thing about Dark Souls 1 that I will say is the best in the series is I really love the level design. I love how everything is connected. You know, you find a shortcut and you find yourself back at, you know, the Firelink Shrine, and you're just like, oh shit, that was just, it blew my mind. And the further you get into the game, you find more and more shortcuts that will lead you to other locations, and everything's just connected like beautifully. I miss that in the Dark Souls series. Essentially, it's kind of like an open world game, but it's not really open world, but yeah, everything's kind of connected, and it just, oh man, it was incredible. Dark Souls 2 was more like branching paths. You know, you go down one path, there's an end, and you make your way back, and then you go down another path. Dark Souls 3 was more like, you select the level you want to go to. I was so hoping that Dark Souls 3 would have the same kind of like, you know, level design as the first Dark Souls. But despite that, you know, the awesome level design, Dark Souls 1 had so many memorable moments for me. The first time you enter an Orlando, I will never forget that. The boss fights, I mean, yeah, I get it. Going back and playing Dark Souls 1 now, it's definitely not as hard as I remember it. Obviously, you know, playing all the newer games and Elden Ring, Dark Souls 1 it's not that hard, but even so, the boss fights are so memorable. Dark Souls 3 had a lot of memorable boss fights as well, but goddamn, just the premise, everything about Dark Souls 1. Like, I love Dark Souls so much that I 100% it. I've done everything in the game. Like, yeah, I love this game. It's definitely one of my main achievements that I'm proud to have. So yeah, the Dark Souls series, an incredible series, and Dark Souls 1 definitely takes a spot.
For you, James. See? I'm real.
Silent Hill 2. For those that have seen my Silent Hill 2 remake review, will know how much love I have for the Silent Hill series, specifically Silent Hill 1 to 4, and definitely Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 was my first experience in the Silent Hill series, and I've loved it ever since. I really enjoyed the remake. I thought the remake was solid. I will admit I thought it was going to flop, but I'm glad it didn't. It was a fantastic remake. But I mean, you definitely can't beat the original. In a time where Resident Evil was dominating the horror genre, out comes Silent Hill, and I missed the opportunity of playing the first Silent Hill, but when I got my PS2, getting Silent Hill 2 for the first time, I loved it. And back then it was terrifying, it was scary, but I loved the plot, I loved the story, I loved these characters. It was the first time that I got really obsessed with a game in terms of like its plot. It was crazy. It took over my life. I'm not a huge fan of like the cult aspects in the Silent Hill story, like in Silent Hill 1 and 3, you know, trying to resurrect a god and all that. I'm not a huge fan of that. I still love the games. I still think Silent Hill 1 and 3 are fantastic. I'm just not a huge fan of the cult stuff. Silent Hill 2, for me, felt more relatable with its characters and its plot. It's more about, you know, tragedy that, you know, people can relate to, losing a loved one, the guilt and the trauma that someone could have for something that they've done in their past, the psychological aspects of trauma. I find that really fascinating. And in my opinion, nothing can beat the Pyramid Head. He's so iconic that pretty much everyone knows who the Pyramid Head is, even if you haven't played Silent Hill. The music, the atmosphere, the narrative, the plot, the writing, I still think the writing's great. Just everything about the game is super fantastic. Again, I'm so happy that the remake has came out and it's done really well. It was a solid game. I'm really happy about that because Silent Hill 2, yeah, is one of my favorite games of all time.
Do you remember a time when armies were built and powerful cities collapsed? When the smallest of choices echoed through the pages of history. It was an age of empires.
I have no idea how many hours I've put into this game collectively. This game is my ultimate go-to game. God damn. I would put on Age of Empires 2 any day. God damn. If anybody wants a battle, I'm right here, bruh. I dare you. It just takes over me. It's crazy. In terms of RTS, I think this is the best RTS game like ever made. I'm not a huge fan of Age of Empires 3, and Age of Empires 4 didn't, unfortunately, it was, I was looking forward to that, but unfortunately, it just didn't hit for me. So Age of Empires 2 it is, and Age of Empires 2, I mean, it's still solid, even if you get the definitive edition or the original. God damn, I love Age of Empires. So good. All the civilizations you can play as, they all have different attributes, and it's fun playing each of them. All the little sounds that your villagers make, it still plays in my head. I hear that shit when I'm sleeping. Yeah, super fun game. It's one of my favorite games of all time, definitely 100%. There really isn't much more to say, but yeah, Age of Empires 2, god damn.
This is Snake. Colonel, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. What's the situation, Snake?
Looks like the elevator in the back is the only way up.
Just as I expected.
We're getting closer and closer towards that #1 game of all time. Going through this list is making me reflect a lot on all of these games that I have played and love so much. But here we are at number 5, and wow. I'm a huge Metal Gear Solid fan. Played them all. Love them all. But in my opinion, you cannot beat the first Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid 3 is close, but I have to give it to Metal Gear Solid 1. That game had so many memorable moments. It's crazy, and I still think of all of them to this day. It was one of the first games that really hit me in terms of like story. Like, I'd never seen a game like this. It blew my tiny little mind. This was like a movie. Like the voice acting, the sound, the music. I'm playing a movie here. It was crazy. It was crazy. It was a different time. But I have a funny story about Metal Gear Solid, okay? The first time I played Metal Gear Solid. Here we go. When Metal Gear Solid came out, remember, back then, the internet wasn't a huge thing as it is today, okay? We relied on magazines. We get a magazine. Sometimes you get a demo with it, which was incredible. We just played that demo over and over again. But yeah, we relied on magazines for information. And even then, I didn't even know what Metal Gear Solid was, but we didn't have the luxury, I didn't have the luxury of being able to buy whatever game I wanted to buy. Not like today, okay? I can buy whatever game I want. But back then, no, I didn't have that luxury. When I got my pocket money, I would save it up specifically for a game that I wanted. And if I wasted that money on a game that wasn't good, my life was basically ruined, okay? But I remember there was a thing going around where you could chip your PlayStation 1 console, okay? It's an illegal thing, okay? I don't condone it, but yeah, it was what we did, right? So we had our console chipped, which basically meant you can play pirated games, okay? And the way we did it was every second week or so, we would go down to a little place called the market, right? Which is a stall, you know, people are selling shit, you know, like it's like a car boot sale. Like Facebook, the Facebook marketplace, but instead it's a physical place you went to and people were just selling random shit, right? There was a stall where somebody would sell copied games. You would go down and some games would cost £1, some games will be £5. So we would use our pocket money to buy, you know, 1 or maybe even 2 games. And I remember buying a game called Metal Gear Solid. I think it was £5. Anyway, so I bought a game, as well as a few of my other friends bought a game called Metal Gear Solid. And we went home, we played it, and it blew our tiny little minds, right? Okay? It was incredible. There was a point in the game where you needed a specific codec number for a character. Her name was Meryl. And the Colonel Campbell, who's talking to you on the codec, informs you that her codec is the back of the CD case. Now, we're running about this game looking for a CD case to try and find this codec that belongs to this character that we needed to progress the game. And for the life of us, couldn't find it. Where is this? Where is a CD disc? Where is it? Anyway, and it wasn't until months later that we were in Blockbuster. Do you guys remember Blockbuster? And we were browsing, and it had like a little game section. It wasn't very big, it was just a small little section. And we used to like going there, you know, just like looking at the game covers and go, oh, that's cool, blah, 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 blah. But then we noticed the game cover for Metal Gear Solid. Now, when we got the games, it was literally just a CD with Metal Gear Solid written on it, right? You didn't get a cover or anything like that. It was literally just a disc, Metal Gear Solid, that was it. We saw the cover, and we were like, oh, so cool, that's amazing. We were looking at the back, and I noticed, okay, at the back of the CD case was an image of Meryl and her codec number. And I froze. I just froze in time. I was like, wait a minute. This is what Colonel Campbell was talking about. Behind the CD case. He was talking about the game cover case. And I looked at my friends, and I was just like holding the back of the CD case. And I'm just like, guys, the codec. Anyway, so we all just looked at each other. We put the game down and we bolted. The owner must have thought we stole something. Anyway, but we bolted. We ran out the store and we just went our separate ways. We didn't even say bye to each other. We just went our separate ways, ran home. And whilst we were running home, maybe 15, 20 minutes to run home, we were just memorizing. I was memorizing the number in my head, just running home. Anyway, got in, put the game on, put the codec in, and yeah, it was the codec. And I can continue the game. That's one of my favourite highlights in my gaming life. Anyway, Metal Gear Solid is a fantastic game. It's got so many memorable moments. The fight with Psycho Mantis.
Good girl. Just like that.
Him moving the controller. I get it. Controller vibrates and he's vibrating the controller. I get it, right? But you have to remember, the first time I was playing this game, it blew my tiny little mind that he was moving this controller across my floor. I was freaking out. Anyway, like even the bit where Snake is getting electrocuted in the chair thing, and Naomi tells Snake in the codec to put the controller next to your arm, so the vibrations will help because you're rapidly pressing the button. So your arm is kind of like aching, right? So you put the controller against your arm and the vibrations will kind of like massage your arm. Even that, that blew my mind. Anyway, Metal Gear Solid, the first one, has a massive soft spot in my heart. Like, there are better Metal Gear Solid games, hands down. Metal Gear Solid 3 is a fantastic game, but it doesn't have the same impact it did when I first played Metal Gear Solid 1. Metal Gear Solid has to be in my spot. It has to be. Yeah, definitely. Metal Gear Solid 1, hands down, one of my favourite games I've ever played.
Looks like we'll be a little delayed. What are you doing? Don't think. Shoot!
They told me, son, you're special. You were born to do great things. You know what? They were right.
I remember the first time I played BioShock, and I will never forget it. The atmosphere, the tension, the mystery, the overall gameplay. I mean, what can I say about BioShock? The premise of being stuck in this incredible underworld city known as Rapture was so fun to explore, and it really captured my imagination in a way that no other games really do. The overall atmosphere in this game is just amazing, with its hauntingly beautiful and dark undertones and the unique 40s style that immerse you in the overall experience. From the art decor to the overall sound design, every detail contributes to the feeling of being in a world that is both fascinating and terrifying. The story unfolds in a captivating way, drawing you deeper and deeper into the mystery of Rapture as you encounter the bizarre and memorable inhabitants. Exploring this city is something like no other for me, and I can't help but appreciate the amazing creativity that went into building this unforgettable experience. You know, I remember my first steps into Rapture and just getting sucked into the overall atmosphere and, you know, what's going on. Experiencing the Big Daddies for the first time, you know, the whole Would You Kindly, Andrew Ryan, Xander Cohen, you know, all of the splicers and the messed up things that are happening in Rapture. Yeah, something I will never forget. The gameplay was so creative as well, you know, playing about with all these different like elemental plasmids that, you know, you could use to your advantage. BioShock will always be a game that I will remember for the rest of my days. I crave for another BioShock game. I know there's a BioShock 4 coming out, but I don't know. Kev Levine and his new company, you know, working on his new game, Judas, which I have really high hopes for, but only time will tell. BioShock 2 was great. I loved it. It was still on the premise of the first BioShock. BioShock 3 took a bigger leap in a different direction. I still think it was a good game, but BioShock 1... oh, man. Final Fantasy VII was my first Final Fantasy game. Like, I did play Final Fantasy 3 on the original Nintendo, which turned out to be Final Fantasy 6, but whatever. Yeah, Final Fantasy VII was my first one. Now, the first time I played Final Fantasy VII, I didn't really enjoy it because back then, reading was for losers. I didn't want to fucking read, okay? So it took me a while to get into the game. But once I did, goddamn, it blew me away. It was the first, I probably said this a lot throughout this series, it's my first experience. But yeah, it was my first kind of experience with, like, story. It's a huge game. And the story, the characters, just everything about this game just hit hard for me. It was one of my first experiences with death as well, in a character in a game that... It hit. It fucking hit me. That was dreadful. I was so emotionally involved in these characters and the story and just everything about this game. And there's loads of moments in this game that I'll remember for forever. I was super buzzed when they announced the remake. Obviously, nostalgia plays a big part in games, especially when you're growing up. I did enjoy the remake and I did enjoy Rebirth, but it just didn't have, in my opinion, okay, it just didn't have the same soul. And it's maybe because I have played the original. If I didn't play the original and played this, maybe, I don't know, I might feel differently, but yeah, I don't know. The original Final Fantasy, the turn-based combat system, the music, the story, exploring the world and interacting with different characters and, you know, the leveling up system. Everything about that game was just so fascinating for me, being at a young age and playing a game like that I've never actually played before. Yeah, it was a big influence in my life. The thing about Final Fantasy VII, like, I love that game so much, being at a young age, that I wanted to make a comic book about Final Fantasy VII. Like, I would sit there and I'll play the game and I would write down all the dialogue, every single thing that anybody said. I would write them all down. I had a thick ass fucking book, right? And I wrote down all the dialogue. So I had basically the whole entire script of the game. Yeah, I wanted to turn that into a little comic book. It's crazy. It influenced me. It influenced me. And I do owe a lot to Final Fantasy VII. What a game. I mean, I do enjoy other Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy VIII was great. Final Fantasy IX was, I think, better than 8. Final Fantasy X was great, the more so for the gameplay. I didn't really like the story as much. I skipped out on 11 because I don't really care about online. 12 was pretty decent. I thought it was interesting, the changes. Ultimately, I just didn't like the direction that Final Fantasy was going into. Like, Final Fantasy 13 was terrible, I'm sorry. Absolutely atrocious. 15, again, I just couldn't get into. And at this point, you know, I kind of lost interest in Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy just became a thing of the past for me. But then with the announcement of the remake, I thought, okay, well, here we go. I mean, I'm definitely going to be playing the remake, obviously. It's a remake of one of my beloved games. So I'm going to try it at least. And I loved it, and it was great. I think for me, Final Fantasy is kind of back. I mean, I'm going to play part 3, hopefully when that comes out, whenever that comes out. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII, the original, will always be one of my favorite games of all time. It's funny because I used to always say my favorite game of all time is Final Fantasy VII. So, yeah. Here we are. Number 2. What game can be better than Final Fantasy VII, BioShock, Metal Gear Solid, Age of Empires, Silent Hill 2, Dark Souls, Disco Elysium, Fallout 3, I don't think there is a game that I adore more than Shadow of the Colossus. It may not be my number 1, but that does not matter. I absolutely love Shadow of the Colossus. I love all of these games equally, but Shadow of the Colossus is on a different level for me. Yes, like I said, it's not my number 1, but that is irrelevant. It does not matter. I'm a huge fan of Firmino. I love The Last Guardian, and I love his first game, Ico. Back when Ico came out, my first experience with Firmino's games, I remember seeing Ico in a magazine one day. I can't remember the issue or whatever, but I remember seeing, screenshots of this game called Ico, and it grabbed me. I don't know if it's because the artistic side of me, I like to draw a lot, and the overall style that I was looking at, I loved it. I was definitely interested. Back in those days, we weren't fortunate with money. We had to really pick and choose what games we wanted to buy. And during that time, Final Fantasy X just hit the scenes. It was like 7 or 8 months apart from Final Fantasy X before Ico came out, but still, yeah, my pocket money was saved up for Ico. Whilst all my friends were, playing Final Fantasy X, and I was eagerly sitting in the background waiting for Ico to come out, I finally got it and played it and loved it. I remember playing Ico for the first time. I fell in love with Ico from the very beginning. And I remember a friend of mine was like, why are you playing this game? Yeah, so not a lot of people I know like or have even heard of Ico, but a lot of people have heard of Shadow of the Colossus. It's a pretty big deal. And there is a good few games that mimic the Shadow of the Colossus kind of style. There's Prayer of the Gods, which I did play. It's not bad. It's okay. It just reminds me of, Shadow of the Colossus, which is a much better game. But yeah, the thing that I really like about Shadow of the Colossus is how simple it is. It's a very simple plot. Boy wants to save girl, and in order to save the girl, he has to take down these gigantic colossi. And I always remember my first experience playing the game. I felt, taking down these colossi, that something was wrong. This is not right, what I'm doing. And it's, as you get further and further into the game, you start to realize what's happening. And when you get to the end of the game and the climax, you're just like, oh my God, I have so many memorable moments with this game. This game will forever, ever be one of my favorite games of all time. There really isn't anything else I could say about Shadow of the Colossus. It does hit hard for me emotionally. I love this game so much. And I am super happy and super excited that Firmino is working on his next project, Project Robot. I am definitely one of the people that really liked and enjoyed The Last Guardian. It does have problems, but I loved it. I love the premise of it. And that's what I like about his games. What an experience. What an experience. Yeah, Shadow of the Colossus, fantastic game. This isn't going to come as a surprise for anybody that knows me. Yeah, my favorite game of all time is Bloodborne. Bloodborne is, oh my god, I fucking love this game. It's very rare for me to be able to say that there is not a single thing that I dislike about a game, and Bloodborne is it. There is nothing in Bloodborne that I don't like. I love this game. The game does suffer from a hardware problem. It is capped at 30 frames on the PlayStation 4. That's just unfortunate. That's not a fault to the game itself. It's a hardware problem, but yeah. It's a shame because like the only way you can play Bloodborne, unless you go down the illegal route, is on the PS4 or if you have a PS5. I know a few people that would love to play Bloodborne that don't have a PlayStation. But yeah, this game needs to come to PC. It needs to be ported to PC. I'm not the only one. I know a lot of people want this to happen as well. But god damn it, if this came out on PC, it would be the highlight of the year for me. This is not just my favourite Souls game, it's my favourite game ever. I love the overall atmosphere, the dark tone, the boss fights are incredible, the sound design is incredible. Personally, I feel that Sekiro has the best gameplay that From Software have created. The gameplay in Sekiro is, oh my god, it's so good, it's perfect. The way the parry system works, it's kind of like a rhythm. Once you get into that rhythm, it's so smooth. It's as smooth as butter. It's, oh my god. But even though I think Sekiro has the best gameplay, Bloodborne, oh man, the combat is so satisfying. It did take me a while to get used to the game because I was so accustomed to Dark Souls, you know, with a shield. Just everything about this game is fantastic. I love this game so much that, yeah, it's one of those games that I've done everything. I've 100%ed it. I still listen to the soundtrack to this day. Anything Bloodborne related, I will watch. It's crazy. This game like took over as well in terms of lore. I still find things fascinating about the game. It's an incredible game. And if you haven't played it, god damn. I've always said that it's one of those games that I would like to wipe my mind and be able to play it again fresh, but at the same time, I don't even think that would matter. Even if I played the game again, I still love it. I think it's just an incredible game to play. Bloodborne is my favourite game of all time, and I really want this to be ported on PC. Please port it on PC, whoever's listening. Anyway, thank you for sticking around and watching this series. This has been my top favourite games of all time, and it was fun working on this list. But yeah, there's so many games that I would have loved to add in this top 10 list, but unfortunately I couldn't. But yeah, it is what it is. So yeah, that is my definitive top 10 favourite games of all time. Thank you very much for sticking around and watching this video of my definitive top 10 favourite games of all time. If you haven't already, check out this video where I play Visage and absolutely shit myself. I did not like this game. Anyway, as always, stay safe and have fun gaming.